Wonderful. Well, I think we can then, oh, Charmaine's literally jumping out of his seat now. It's wonderful that we can make a fantastic start now. I'm definitely looking forward to this evening. And I would like to officially welcome all of you to the second Lunar Society online Black In series of events, which we're holding in line with the Lunar Society's mission to stimulate ideas, broaden debate, and catalyze action. And we're doing this in the celebration and honor of Black History Month. So most of you do know me, but for those of you who don't, my name is Deirdre Labassiere, and I'm welcoming you in my capacity as the current chair of the Lunar Society. So if we were in normal space, I would be doing the usual house rules about fire exits and such like, but tonight we're just going to do the online house rules. So I saw someone in the chat did ask if the event is being recorded. Yes, it is. If you wish to remain anonymous or to be anonymous, please just turn off your camera. And I think there's also a feature to allow you to turn off your name if you don't wish to be seen at all. You're welcome to use the mute button during the meeting, other than when you are, of course, speaking. And that button can be found on the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. If you want to make a point or to ask a question, you can signal to the chair, who will be Charmaine Burton for the evening. And if you want to speak, you can use the reactions button, or you can send a thumbs up. If you actually agree with what a speaker is saying, you can use the hand clapping facility. If you disagree with what a speaker is saying, wait until you have the opportunity to express that disagreement. Zoom doesn't allow for thumbs down buttons. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. And of course, we have that incredible chat feature, which I'm so thrilled to see that people are already using. So please do use that. And it'll allow you to ask the chair questions or to comment on something while somebody else is speaking. Okay, so that's the boring stuff out of the way. Black History Month, you know, it's always such an incredible opportunity, I think, for us to recognize the absolutely outstanding contributions of people of African and Caribbean descent, and those contributions that they've made both now, in the past, and of course that we're making for the future, paving a way for those who are coming after us. So in celebration of that, we at the Lunar Society decided to pay homage to 4 areas of Black contribution, in particular law, health, innovation, and of course, tonight, through our esteemed panel, politics. Now, I hope you'd agree with me that we, as a Black people, are a polyolithic people. And the one area that I think that perpetuates Black people as a race, no matter where we are in the world, is the arts. It is the rhythm of our life's blood, whether through the music, the spoken word, or the brushstroke, that can be for us and for all other races on the planet, that thing that stimulates ideas, broadens debate, and catalyzes action on so many levels. And it's actually for that reason that I am so grateful to Charmaine for actually coming up with the idea to incorporate the arts into this series. So thank you so much, Charmaine. So for tonight's proceedings, we're going to first hear and see from a prodigious visual artist named Colin Gabidon, who will be presenting 2 of his works. And then our esteemed panel of Lord Simon Woolley, a life peer of the House of Lords, a titan of societal change, whose services to race equality were recognized by the Queen in 2019. Simon founded the pioneering Operation Black Vote, and he's only just recently stepped down from chairing the government's Race Disparity Unit's advisory group in July. Joining him is Bishop Dr. Joe Aldred, an outstanding broadcaster on several platforms, including the BBC. He's an ecumenist. I hope I pronounced that right, Joe. He's an author and a speaker. He's responsible for Pentecostal and multicultural relations at Churches Together in England, and he is a bishop in the Church of God of Prophecy. And Joe and I share a very passionate interest: cricket. I know this because Joe actually accepted my Facebook friend request probably about 5-6 years ago. So, and I've seen his posts, and we share, we seem to, or we're on parallels whenever the West Indies is beaten anywhere else in the world, frankly. We have as well Deputy Lord Mayor, Madam Councillor Yvonne Mosquito. This woman is an extraordinary woman of authenticity in office and grace under fire. She has served in the public arena for over 20 years. I know she doesn't look it, I know. And her groundbreaking work has over the years, frankly, served to encourage and empower Black communities in Birmingham. I include myself in those whom she has encouraged and empowered. And beyond that, she's an incredible entrepreneur and runs a funeral home. Incredible. And of course, we have the incomparable Rachel Okello. She is such a sought after speaker. I think we're just so blessed that she's been able to be with us tonight. She specializes in immigration law. She and I also have a connection with Grenada. And she is the former deputy leader of the Sutton Coldfield Town Council. She's also the founder of the Our African Farm concept, which is incredible. It creates an avenue for middle income earners in the UK to enter into the northern Uganda agricultural space. It's phenomenal. And this woman is currently going through the process to become a UK Member of Parliament. So tonight's event is going to be chaired by a woman who, when I first met her, told me that she speaks truth to power. What I have seen of this woman is that she engages, whether as a host on her radio show, Different Angles, or in her capacity as a former House of Commons Committee on Standards lay member and vice chair. She engages in seeking powerful truth. She has an exceptional sense of what is really going out there and what is going on out there, and bringing that back in a meaningful and impactful way to people for them to understand. She's an expert on political environments, enterprise, social engagement, and change. She is, of course, Charmaine Burton. So, but before we go on to the panel, we are going to hear from our first artist, Colin Gabidon. At the end of the event, you're going to hear from Kwame Toussaint, who is actually going to give us some live jazz music. And it's just going to be phenomenal. So without further ado, we will go on to hear from Colin. Thank you.
Thank you, Deirdre. And good evening, everyone. Okay, we have a slight problem here. I haven't got the pictures with me, unfortunately.
But we do.
We can deal with that.
We do. Okay, so I'll just continue talking about it.
Yes, please.
Okay. All right, there they are. Okay, right. That's Marcus Garvey. Well, we all know Marcus Messiah Garvey. Man, he's been a great leader for the Black race and Black community, and a man of so much influence. I mean, when I was younger, we wasn't taught about Marcus Garvey. The Rastas used to always talk about Marcus Garvey, but I think with the education we were getting, the normal boy in the street, we wasn't taking any notice, because I think that back in those days, it was like Rasta, you know, don't listen to Rasta. And I think we used to kind of diss wrestlers, right? But what we've learned now, we realized Marcus Garvey was a great man, international businessman, educator, and so forth. And in my late knowing of him, if you like, it just made me want to embrace what I'm knowing now, if you like, if you want to put it that way. And I remember, when was it? When was his birthday? Last month, I think, yeah. And bang, someone said it's his birthday. I heard it was his birthday. And I said, whoa, I've got to do a painting of Marcus Garvey. And I was so sad that I missed it. And I said, right, okay, I'm going to have to get this painting done for Black History. And straight away, I got at it, got my canvas, stretched it, and started to find pictures, researching and everything. And I thought, well, I'm going to compose this picture because what I do, I tend to create a painting. So no one's seen it before or anything. So I had to research, get photographs, build a painting, find a nice chair to put him in. And as you can see, he's got his stick that he's known for. And so I created that painting out of my own vision. So you won't see that anywhere. It's very unique. And so that's my dedication to him, really, and for what he's done for me and for the Black race community. And hopefully the painting can touch people, you know. Yeah, and as I say, I've just finished it. And so, yeah, oil and canvas. What else can I say? I mean,
Thank you, Colin. You had a second painting that you wanted to show the delegate.
Have you got it?
Yes, we do.
Oh, right, there it is. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Right, I've named this painting Icon. Right, now this, oh gosh, what can I say? I'm a musician as well. I'm a drummer. I've been playing music all my life, you know, touring and everything. I've met Bob Marley. I've shared stage with one with the red hat. That's Ruggs of Third Rail, a few times. And these guys, I call them musical storytellers. And they've all passed on now. They've died. They've left us with great music, fantastic music. And I just wanted to give back something. And I thought, well, why not create a painting with them all in the same room? So I had to do, again, a lot of researching, trying to find them to match up in the same age, so I can get them in the same age group, so that as if they're actually in that room, because they died at certain age times in their lives. So, so if you like Bob Marley, I had to put everyone in that same year that Bob Marley died and have them in the room. And so that's what I did. And for me, as I say, they've said so much. I mean, Bob Marley has done so much. I'm a drummer, and Bob Marley's drummer, he was my inspirator when I started playing, you know, his style of playing. He's not with us either, but he's not in the painting. He was just a drummer, if you like. These are singers. And so, you know, we have in the red shirt on the right, John Holt. We have Bob Marley. I should go from left to right. Okay, we have Peter Tosh in the green t-shirt. We have Gregory Isaac with the hat above him. We have Dennis Brown in the brown hat and yellow shirt. We have Bonnie Ruggs of Third Rail in the red hat that I played with Bob Marley. And then we have Garnet Silk, who was the next Bob Marley, but he died young, which is a shame. And then we have John Holt. And great people, great musicians. And by the way, yeah, and these pictures are available as prints, limited edition, signed canvas. They will be available, but yeah, details you will get at some point. Can I say any more, or am I?
No, that's brilliant, Colin. Thank you so very much. And I think when I saw Colin's art, what resonated with me, particularly for tonight, was that Marcus Garvey and indeed the artists that are displayed here all influenced my political views and my political vision. And it's incredible how the messages that came through the music or through the example of Marcus Garvey and what he has achieved and what he sought to achieve was something that really resonated with me in my younger years. I won't say my youth because I'm not that old, but it's something that I think probably has colored some of what our panelists have, of where they are right now in terms of their political views and their political agendas. So without further ado, thank you so much again, Colin. I'm going to hand over to Charmaine and to our esteemed panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Deirdre. So I wanted us to start with a few minutes going through our distinguished panel, just for them, like an open statement really around the topic of what we are looking at today, which I've sent out to you all. And I wanted to start with Lord Simon Woolley. A couple of minutes just to set a bit of context for us.
Thank you, Charmaine. Thank you, Charmaine. Thank you for being an activist. I mean, can I tell the listeners that Charmaine has been banging on my door for the past 2 weeks or so. She said, listen, Simon, we have the Lunar Society, and I am not asking. I am lovingly telling you to be at our meeting because we'd like you to be there. And if I didn't answer, she's just reminding you, Simon. Look. And she did it all with a smile. How could anybody say no?
Oh, thank you.
Nice one.
I've known Charmaine for a long time, and I love what she does and what she brings. And I think that she's brought a great host of very good people. It's great to see my dear friend, Dr. Bishop Joe Aldred. We go back a long time. We are brothers in arms, the spiritual arms. We're good friends, and as good friends, we argue, we cross swords, but then hug each other and say we're in this struggle together. And I'm also extremely pleased to see another good friend, Yvonne Mosquito. Now, when I think of Yvonne and Joe, we've all got scars, the scars on our back, let me say. From the struggle, and we have them as a badge of honor because we care about our community, we care about the struggle, and I'm just pleased to be with you today, and I hope that the listeners out there will be encouraged and be inspired by the words that we might offer. Metaphorical, that's the word I was looking for.
Bishop Dr. Joe Aldred.
I think you may have called me.
Yes, would you like to say a few opening words?
Sure. It seems that the internet here is a bit unstable, so I hope you can hear me. Well, good evening, and it really is great to be here. Thanks, Simon, for those kind words, and everybody else. I feel like I am genuinely amongst friends, and Yvonne also known for a very long time, of course. Our host Charmaine is everything that you've just said, Lord Simon. Pushy, never know, don't take no for an answer. All of those things are absolutely true, and she doesn't give you much choice when she asks you to participate. So here I am, but I'm very pleased to be here. I think if it's not too early to start showing one's hand about where we go with this tonight. Maybe the one early point I want to make is that I long for the emergence of the African diaspora community in the UK, as some are beginning to call us, to emerge in its diversity, to go forward in something of the spirit of Marcus Garvey, which is a spirit very much beginning with the self, very much beginning with me, created in the image of God, and one which does not ask permission to be, but one which simply is. And I know that doesn't tell the whole story. There are challenges to be met and to overcome. But in my view, we do that from that position of certainty, certitude about our own personal identity, not dependent on anybody to give me validity, but I have it. And from Garvey, I learned that you take the future into your hands and you move forward in that way. So that's my kind of opening gambit. I look forward to a lively, informed conversation tonight.
Deputy Mayor, Councillor Yvonne Mosquito, your few words.
Good evening. Well, first of all, I feel very honoured to be part of this, not just the panel itself, with His esteemed Lord Woolley, and I was so ecstatic when he became a Lord. I'm very much anti-establishment, as some of you may know, but when Simon became a Lord, it was the very first time in my life that I felt proud of someone receiving such an honour. And so I just want to place that on record that I'm extremely happy, and it makes me feel very proud. So whilst I'm not into OBs and MBs, I was very happy when we had our Lord Woolley. And I think of all of the individuals, I think you deserve it, certainly one of the most deserving of this honour. But when I looked at the lineup today, not just the panel, but the guests and the other people, Deirdre, obviously, Charmaine, obviously, we've got Rachel Okello, but there's also Councillor Jackie Taylor and Carl. Every time I see Carl George, I think of his wonderful son, who really is my child. And I've noticed Clive Stone. There are so many people that I already know. Nikki Clark, who is the other one? Val Benjamin. I mean, it made me realise that I was getting slightly older, because I practically know all of you. John Cragg's absolutely wonderful wife that I met. And whilst I think about Black History Month, I know that our history is more expansive than a month, but that we are just one race. There isn't a different races, there's one race. There's different ethnic groups as one race. And when the Irish Prime Minister came over, it gave me great pride to tell him that the first Briton, Cheddar Man, was actually Black. It gave me great pride to tell him. And also I informed him, amongst other things, that means that I think it's the 10% of the blood of all white people in this country, or some, I can't remember the figures, but the percentage of the blood or the DNA is Black. So it meant that if they were in South Africa, they'd be deemed as being Black. I'm not getting it quite right. But the Black History Month for me, I've always struggled with the concept of Black History Month, knowing that our history is a lot more expansive. And when I explained to the Irish Prime Minister that the African Caribbean, or the Jamaicans and the Irish, are very similar, I realised how. And I went into great depth to tell him that Sir Patrick Allen, the current Governor General, Sir Patrick Allen, had Irish ancestry. We are all so connected. So sometimes we focus on our divisions, and we have those negative people. And when I was younger, I did focus on divisions. We should really focus on the things that make us stronger as human beings. Joe said it eloquently, that we are made in the image of God. There is no division between us. Paul, was it Paul, Bishop Joe Aldred, that said that there was no difference between the Gentiles and the slaves and the women and all that kind of thing. So it's an honor to be here amongst guests who sadly I've known for a little while. Thank you.
Thank you. Rachel Okello, your opening words?
Yes, hello, Charmaine. Thank you so much for the invite. It's really lovely to be here. And I also want to extend, of course, congratulations to Lord Woolley on his peership. It's excellent. As you know, as Charmaine knows, I run the online Black Women in Politics Facebook page, and there was congratulations all around there. We were all very happy. That was lovely to see. Yeah, in Black History Month, it's always a tricky one for me because I'm a reluctant politician in a way. I'm always taking 2 steps forward and then 1 step backward. And probably that's what caused me to miss my vote when everybody was going for selection for the general election last year. And a lot of my colleagues who I started in politics with are now members of parliament, and I sort of not wanting to put my feet in too deep, I think I got left behind in the wave of new MPs. So it's something that I'm going to be pursuing now, going forward quite vigorously. And it's a common thing, I think, with people from an ethnic minority background, but sometimes for a variety of reasons, not always willing to push ourselves through in a society which sometimes we think whether they are real or perceived obstacles, but sometimes they can prevent us from moving forward. So it's a very timely time to talk about being Black in politics, and also with Black History Month. So I'm looking forward to this great conversation tonight.
Thank you. I'm going to ask everybody, if you want to start getting in your questions, you know, just let me know if you do have questions, because we will be finishing on time today. So we're looking to conclude this discussion part at about 7:45. And then I'll be handing over to Deirdre, and then we'll be finishing with our wonderful musicians. So please start getting your questions in, because I really hope that we can engage in this conversation. It's more about you who've taken the time out to be here with us this evening than hearing my voice. So it's about you and our panel. So I want to start with the first question, and I'm going to ask Lord Woolley if you would be the first to answer this for me. And it will be, why is it important to have Black representation in the political arena, and especially senior roles?
Well, I remember, Charmaine, one of the greatest highlights of my political career was to be with Reverend Jesse Jackson in Dr. Joe Aldred's church at that time. And this is a civil rights icon of great magnitude. And he stepped into that church and he walked onto the stage, and we talked about the power of the Black vote. And when we spoke about not just having a voice, but having a vote, he said, now could I bring up Yvonne Mosquito to the stage? And he brought her up on stage and he said, see this woman? We need to vote for her. We need to ensure that she's in high office. And for me, it was a great moment, because it crystallized the journey from King to Jackson to Yvonne Mosquito. And it said to a Black community, look, if you want good people in power, you have to register to vote and vote. Unfortunately, we didn't make it for Yvonne. I mean, she did gain office, but the message was still there. Anywhere there are decisions that affect our lives, Charmaine, we must be at the decision-making table. And it's not just any we. It's we with people of stature, of sense of purpose in the community. I mean, there's an old saying, not all our skin folk are our kinfolk. We want good people at the table that think about us, that think about elevating us. And when we do, everybody wins. It's not just racial justice that gets solved, it's social equality that also comes to the fore. It couldn't be more important, Charmaine.
Bishop Aldred, why is it, in your opinion, important that the church has a voice in the political arena, and how can the church move forward in being more predominant in this arena, and especially in the Lords, as they do have peers who are from Christendom? How does a Black voice, the Black church, fit in there?
Well, the Black church has long been the butt of, justifiably, a lot of criticism about its lack of engagement at strategic level in politics. But it's a criticism that must not go unchallenged, not least because my good friend Robert Beckford, for example, in his writings and his television programs, documentaries, is fond of saying that the Black church has been too much involved with welfare and not sufficiently involved with tackling the strategic powers, principalities and powers. And he's right, but you then have to look at the reality of where the Black church in this country came from. It came from amongst working class, Caribbean mostly, migrants who had a lot of social needs. And if the Black church did not attend to those welfare issues, it would have been remiss. And so I say to folks who make that criticism, do not just rush by with that and not take note of what a stalwart of support the Black church has been for thousands of Black people in this country since Windrush, if you like. Now, that, you know, if you see a person on the street who is hungry and without clothes, they're not asking you to rush off and go and start a political party so much as they're asking you to feed them and to clothe them. So I'm saying that's what we've done. But that leaves undone the macro political strategic work that needs to be done. And the reason it's important that we move on to that in the phase of the Black church life in this country, which I believe we are doing, is because it is not enough, as somebody says, just to fish the bodies out of the water, you know, down the river. You do need to get up to the top of the river to find out who's throwing them in. And so, given that the Black church just finally has been working with grassroots Black community and wider over the last 70 years since Windrush, I think it is also important that as we look after people in that sort of social, local social work, welfare work, as Robert calls it, we also need to be involved bringing our perspectives, our ethical, our spiritual senses to policy. And that's why I think it is important that we're there, that we're where policies are being shaped and being influenced. And at the moment we don't. Of course, the Church of England is a state church, so it has historically had, you know, folks in where Lord Woolley is. The Black churches don't have that status in this country, but we have worked and have been working at ensuring that people are encouraged to take part in politics. As Simon has rightly pointed out, people like myself for years have been you know, involved in politics. Maybe I should just quickly say, if I can, that one of the challenges for churches generally is that churches are, you know, spiritual places. They focus on worship and things of the spirit. And that's first for churches. And as a consequence, and particularly because of the type of church that Black churches are in this country, not so much so in Jamaica or the Caribbean, actually, but certainly in this country, it does mean that we find that the people who get involved in politics are hardly ever at the center of the church. They're hardly ever at the altar of the church, you know, serving the sacraments. And it's interesting, I've got much more involved with politicking, both national and local, since I stopped being a pastor of a church than I ever was as a pastor. So if you want to see where the politics is happening around Black churches, you have to look away from the altar and look at those who are actively involved in political affairs further away from the center of it, although Yvonne will scold me and tell me that, of course, some pastors are also politicians.
Councillor Mosquito, in your premiership of being a councillor, how has there been a significant change in how, I guess, Black politicians have been received? Because right now you still are seeing quite a lot of negativity, whether it's online, whatever form it may take. But has there been a change from where you started to where we are now?
Not really, in all honesty. I think when I became a councillor in 1996, I was full of optimism. And as I've moved throughout the years, fighting lots of different battles and trying to encourage people to get into the political arena, involve the churches, try to, and I wouldn't say politicize the church, but involve them in politics more. It hasn't, in my view, got better. What we've managed to do is to empower a few individuals, but not the collective. But what I have noticed is that politicians tend to respect people with money. They respect economic power. And if you want to, Rachel talked about becoming a member of parliament, she will find that she's going to need resources to do that. And sometimes the unions don't give us the support that we should get, meet all the criteria, but they'll not support us for whatever reason. So has things changed? I would say not really. So we will have our leaders that will say we care about Black Lives Matters, and there's the whole debate about all lives matters and all that stuff. But are they really committed to change? I've not really seen it.
Rachel Okello, in your experience of being in politics, how have you dealt with any of the barriers around who you are, a Black woman, and how people perceive or some of the stereotypes that they may have as us as a community? Have you come across it? And if you have, how did you deal with it?
So it's different if you're in, I suppose, depending on what party you're in. So do I mention parties or do I not? I don't know what context you want me to. Do I mention political party? Yeah, okay. So I'm in the Conservative Party. So I suppose and assume it's different depending on which party you belong to. So I haven't really personally felt any obstacles coming my way. I am pushed and encouraged a lot. However, if I'm being fair, it could be because as a profession, I'm a solicitor and I have a different, not a different background, because I come from a very working class Windrush background, but I'm probably at a different place to a few other people, or so I'm told. So I think people sometimes hit a glass ceiling where they can't go much further. And it's a bit like where Councillor Mosquito has said, you need resources. And depending on what background you're from or who is going to support you, you may not get those resources. So one of the things, I'm also self-employed, so I can't just leave my work. When you're thinking about the reality of becoming an MP, for example, I can't just leave my office and go off campaigning unless there's going to be some financial backing to allow me to do both, to ensure that I am elected. And also a lot of the time, particularly, I probably would say in the Conservative Party as well, there are Black MPs, but there are also a good few who are put in seats where they're not going to win. And that could be for a variety of reasons. But for example, although people shouldn't just be put in safe seats, obviously, but the reality of our politics is that there are safe seats. And so with party politics, if they want people to win, then they need to put them in a proper seat and give them proper resources. And that's the reality. So I think a lot of the political parties who are the main two, they seem to have issues with putting Black people, if we're going to be very specific in the Conservative Party, they need to look at Caribbean representation, and the Labour Party probably need to look at Black male representation. So those are the obstacles that I see, although they may not necessarily be affecting me directly.
Okay, we have a question here from John, is that Rainford, and he says, how about introducing empathy into our education system? That would resolve a lot of bullying and perhaps discrimination. And I leave that open to any of the panel members to comment on. Would you like me to read it again? How about introducing empathy into our education system? That would resolve a lot of bullying and perhaps discrimination. Do you agree or disagree? Panel.
Well, I think empathy is right. We need to see the world through other people's lens. Black Lives Matter has helped a lot of white people gain more empathy to the reality of many Black people's lives. I desperately worry about our young men and women, boys and girls at school, because too often the system is rigged against them. We have a shortage of Black teachers, and too many white teachers see our young men and women not in the most positive light. And I think about this for a second, you know, bringing up a 15-year-old son and seeing the microaggression that he and his friends have to face on a daily basis. And it's tragic. It's truly tragic that on a daily basis they are subliminally and then explicitly told that they cannot excel, they cannot be. And you keep telling that to a child and they begin to accept it. We as parents, as mothers and fathers, we tell our children every day, believe, believe, believe in yourself. But you know, it's more than empathy. We need a level playing field. We need to have a history that reflects a truer narrative of the British Empire, of where we came from. Simon Woolley doesn't sound African to me. The backstory to it is pretty horrific. We've survived, and many of us have thrived, but we need to know the story. Understanding the story is not just for us, it's for white kids too. And that way, that empathy that you talk about stems from understanding, acknowledging, and ensuring that pathways for all our kids can go from A to B to the highest office.
And I'd like to add to that maybe the campaign around getting Black history taught in schools could be a tool to that change as well. Also, Deirdre has put ethical values should be a key driver in advancing political policy. Now, I know that Councillor Jackie Taylor, you have a question. So if you're on mute, if you'd like to unmute yourself and you can ask your question directly.
Thank you very much, Charmaine. And first of all, I'd like to say I'm just delighted to be on this platform this evening. Yes, my name's Jackie Taylor. I'm councillor in Sandwell and cabinet member for sustainable transport. And my question is for Lord Woolley. First of all, I'd like to congratulate you, Lord Woolley, and just ask, it's not a pertinent question, but it's, I just wanted to ask you if becoming a Lord has changed your focus in any way?
You know, Jackie, that Joe will tell you this, and Yvonne too, that when we go into any office, that we take our history with us. And that the first thing, I guess a bit like yourself, Jackie, I mean, you're in the cabinet, you're in high office. I think that we take the responsibility serious. We are consumed with humility. We're forever trying to bring other people up. See on the call, I can see on this call, there's a number of Operation Black Vote alumni, people who I support, who I lobby for, who I nurture. Joe will tell you that's our role. Unless you can have a succession planning, not about me, Jackie, it's not about you, it's about what we do. But let me just tell you this. Somebody said to me today in another Zoom meeting, Simon, you know, you're a great success, you've reached the pinnacle. But let me tell you this, there's 3 times in the first 3 months of being a Lord, I sat in the library. Only the Lords can be in the library. It's a beautiful library. And a Lord would, a fellow peer would tap me on the shoulder and say, excuse me, can you help me with the photocopying? And you know what I did? To my shame, I got up and helped him. The second time I said, you need to ask the staff. The third time I said, go and take a running jump. I was tired of it.
Yes.
But you know, look, this is our reality. We're there to serve. And I've always been a big admirer of Joe and Yvonne, and I'm pleased that you're in the cabinet too. And I'm pleased that you're in the cabinet with gracious grey hair too.
I love my grey hair. I have no problem with it.
You see, Joe's took all his off, so
Right.
he hides it. But we, you know, I think we have to wear our grey hair like a badge of honor. It's got history, but we're here to serve. Jackie.
Can I be honest, Simon, and tell you that every time, you know, before I come on a program like this, I have to get out the shear my wife bought me a few years ago. So I could cut it off myself, right? But it keeps on growing, you know, and so it's a daily job to keep it from growing back. But can I just chip in behind Simon?
Yeah,
I know we won't always go in this order of Simon, Joe, and Yvonne. I'm sure. Okay, yeah. But can I just chip in, not to answer Simon's question that was posed to him, but just talk a little bit about something that worries me and again, I'm coming from this sort of, you know, Garveyite perspective, as I tend to do, about self-sufficiency and self-propelling. It just worries me sometimes a little bit in this country that we may be setting ourselves up to fail by expecting what Simon calls a level playing field. Now, I would simply say, it's no criticism, I'm just making a comment. I would simply say that a level playing field does not exist anywhere in the world. It doesn't exist. Now, when we were talking a while ago about support for, you know, a candidate and how much support you get and how you don't get to a safe seat. Now, it may be disproportionately the case for Black candidates, but I know personally several white people who tried to run for parliament and were put in dead-end seats. Some of them have never made it through. So I guess I'm not making a case for people, you know, playing politics with us. But what I am saying is, I think we need to find a way of agitating for justice, as we should, absolutely standing steadfast against racism and racial bias, but at the same time recognizing that, as my friend's project is called, it takes one hand can't clap, one foot can't walk. And Malcolm Gladwell, in an excellent book that he writes, amongst many excellent books that he writes, the one that is called Outliers, he talks about how any world-class person in the world at anything, he says, has to work, I can't remember, I think it's 10,000 hours to become world-class. And he talks about how in life, opportunity meets preparation. So one of the things that I'm very much encouraging us to think about as a community is that it is one thing to point out, to critique white power, to critique whiteness and so on, and to make demands on it. And that must be done. But it's another thing to say, boy, have we got to be prepared, as we are very often, to ensure that we are not over-expecting from the system something that we're never going to get.
You know what? There's a danger here. There's a danger here.
But before I finish, I know you'll tell me what the danger is, Simon. But what I'm pointing out is, I'm afraid a one-size-fits-all, a one-hand clapping is never going to achieve what we are trying to achieve.
Our DNA is always to fight. Our DNA, it fights against the odds. That's a given. Our parents have told us it. I, as parents, tell my son. I'm happy to tell them that. But I will not accept this rigged society, from primary school, junior school, to college, to university, to work, to political parties. Rachel, you will join a party, as in the Labour Party, that is rigged against you. We have to unblock those blockages so your talent can shine. So I will not listen to any over-exaggeration that we have to do some extraordinary somersault because life is difficult and life is unfair. We know it's unfair. What we're talking about now is tearing down the barriers. And you know why we need to tear down the barriers? Because I am tired of seeing our children, our mothers, our sisters, our friends being blocked for no other reason than the color of their skin. And it's time. The Black Lives Matter movement has said, this is our time to say enough is enough. And let's not get all wound up and say, we've got to pull ourselves up from our bootstraps. We do that anyway.
Lord Woolley, I put it to you, Lord Woolley, I put it to you that we have been doing that for 600 years, i.e. telling somebody else that we are not putting up with it. They threw millions of my people overboard on the seas and raped and pillaged them on the cane fields and the plantations in the Caribbean and so forth. My point simply is not about pulling up by bootstraps. My point is that we have got to recognize that the answers for which we are looking, they say power is never given, it's only ever taken. That making the case to a dead-eared wall is never the full answer to your question. Simon, you've done monumental amount of work for which you have been properly awarded a peerage. I put to you that the disadvantages in communities are as stark today as they were 20, 30 years ago. They are still stark. And they will be stark when your 15-year-old is 50 and 60. My point is that this is a world in which we have challenges to overcome, and the way we overcome them is both by shining a light on the problem, as well as finding creative ways of getting around them, because the people who hold the powers are not about to give it up for you to get a free pass. Can
I come in?
Yes, Yvonne.
I read your book, Joe. It's very interesting. Or listened to
which one?
The Malcolm Outliers, and also listened to Talking to Strangers as well. So Malcolm Gladwell was on GMTV, and they said he's one of the cleverest individuals in the world, and he's indeed a very, very clever man. And I'm not saying what he has said about working really hard hasn't got any value, because obviously it does. But I certainly can tell you from my experience in policing, we had exceptionally bright Black police officers who joined the force. And I would say to the Chief Constable, why can't we get officers above the rank of inspector? And he would say, oh, it's because of their experience. I said, but they've got degrees, they've got, why can't we, why can I go into any hospital, I would say to him, and find Black brain surgeons, Black oncologists, Black doctors, anaesthetists, but in policing, you can't get them above the rank of inspector. And so, you know what, I said many years ago, well, a few years back, I'd say, I did this qualification thing, and it was blind, it was a blind test. Let's introduce blind testing. So before that, to become an inspector, the pass mark would be 0%, 0%, 0%, then 2%, then 0, 0, 0. And this is the brightest black men. When they did the blind test or blind examinations, the pass mark went from 2% to 75%. That showed you that the system, Lord Woolley, was rigged against them. So it didn't matter how hard they worked, they were never going to succeed until we introduced blind marking. Now, we need to change and challenge the system. And the reason why I have a little bit of an issue with when people say, well, all lives matter, we shouldn't just be focusing on that. And I read an article by a journalist called Gary somebody from the ITV, and he said, when anyone talks about all lives matter and you can't change the system, he said, if your house is burning down and you call the fire brigade and they came out and they looked at your burning down house, but they said all houses matter, let's focus on, they wouldn't do that, would they? So the fact is that we have an issue which now is being driven not by Black people, ironically, but by white people who feel incensed all over the world about the treatment that they saw so casually meted out against that Black man. They started to see Black people in a different way than they did before. And now, collectively, Joe, you're right, we can't clap with one hand. They are joining in to change things, not driven by us, but young people. When I saw that statue being toppled down in Bristol, I thought, thank you, Father. It's not no black person, because they'd be in prison. It was white youngsters knocking down that statue.
Okay, we have a comment here from Peter Mayer, and it says, I accept Yvonne's colour is only skin deep, but we need to not only understand our cultural differences, but to respect how these moderate our reactions and respect those. Let's move. We've got a couple of questions, so I want to go straight into the question. And Rachel, I'm going to ask you to answer this one first. How can we effectively engage Black voters to understand the importance of their vote? And this is from Deirdre.
Well, this is just such a difficult question. You know, even my son, he was reading Malcolm X and he said, Mum, because I obviously try to engage Black people to vote. And he said, Mum, you know, Malcolm X tried in the 60s and Martin Luther King tried in the 60s, and, you know, you're still trying now. It's an impossible task, just forget it. There could be so many answers to this question. I think the main answer is that Black people do not feel part of the society. So they tend to think that if they get involved in politics, it's not going to change anything. So we need to have a mindset shift in how firstly, how will it change if people did get involved in politics? Because I don't think it's enough to just say to somebody, oh, vote, and then they end up maybe with Boris Johnson or Jeremy Corbyn, none of which are desirable to either person that you're trying to talk to. We probably have to make people understand the importance to them as an individual. So a few years back when I was campaigning, you get down to, when you're sort of really down to the general election day or the election day, it is really hitting the voters that are likely to vote for you. I think anyone in politics will accept that at that point we are now targeting our most likely voters. And I remember doing an estate somewhere, and I kept coming backwards and forwards every day, you know, targeting our voters. And then this Black lady, she came out of her house one day and she said, oh, excuse me, what are you doing? And I said, I'm, you know, we're running a general election, there's a general election coming up and we're campaigning. And she said, oh, are you not coming to my house? Because I just see you coming backwards and forwards every day because we've got these envelopes to deliver. And I just looked at her and I said to her, well, you're not on my list. It's always rung with me. It's always resonated with me because I was new into politics myself. And it's saying, you're not on my list. You know, it just means so many things. You're not included, you're not involved, you're not participating. You're not on my list. I'm going to walk past your door. She didn't even know there was a general election. Go inside her house. She has a multitude of issues. You know, from you can't even get in because of the furniture to what's happening with her son, all kind of issues. So I tend to think that in order to engage Black people and anybody, but we're talking about Black people in politics, you have to get them to understand how is it going to change their own personal life. And I think that's when you can get the most success.
We're going to move on to a question here from Marcia Lunson. What does the panel see as the obstacle for people in the African Caribbean community engaging in politics? What would they like to see to bring change? Just read that again. What does the panel see as the obstacle for people in African Caribbean communities engaging in politics? What would they like to see to bring change? Let's start with you, Bishop Dr. Aldred.
Well, you'll gather from what I've said so far that in my view, it starts with me and it starts with us. And, you know, if you want to get a sense of what I talk to people in the Church of England, for example, who worry about the lack of presence, Black people in the higher echelon of the Church of England, and you could say the same thing in society wider. My advice to them always is form yourself some caucuses within the Church of England, black caucuses and apply pressure to the system yourself. Begging for it's never going to make it happen. Demanding it, but taking power, gaining power within the system yourself by weight of numbers always will make a difference. And what Yvonne was just talking about a while ago is one such. You might think I'm just saying, you know, well, leave the racist system to run by itself. Completely the opposite is what I'm saying. What I'm actually saying is begging for mercy, like George Floyd, where the police knee continued to be on his neck until he was dead, right? I'm just saying, please get your knee off my neck, sir, will you, is never going to do it. So you have to find a way of doing it, which is not about just asking, please, will you change? Please, will you love me? And that comes with power. So in the community, what we need to do is to get smarter and sharper and more consolidated. And we started about with the churches. I would say that the churches need to learn how, for example, to throw our arms around, throw our weight behind candidates who want to go into politics. It's been done a few times. We don't just need to look at the system and say there aren't enough black people, which is a truism, but what we need to do is organize ourselves to put people there.
Thank you.
Can I just comment quickly, if that's okay?
Yeah.
I would normally agree with Bishop there in what he's saying, but I think we have to, at a point, understand that we're not all the same. Not everybody's starting from the same place, or not everybody's reached the same place. So for my typical example, I'm an immigration solicitor, so I'm very well versed. I can go to court and I can stand up for people, but that same person couldn't stand up for themselves, you know, and I think we've got to be quite mindful that not everybody can stand up for themselves. If we use the knee on my neck analogy, not everybody really knows what to do to get that officer's knee off the man's neck. Some of us would have done something differently because we know differently, but not everybody knows. And I think when we're talking about the black community, probably not the majority of people don't actually know what to do. And we have to bear that in mind when we're sort of thinking of the solutions that we need.
I'm going to go to Clive. You've got a question, if you'd like to ask it now, please.
Thank you very much. I'm not quite sure whether it's a question, but it's a couple of comments. First of all, I've been on a number of these Zoom webinars, and this is probably the most important, exciting and innovative that we've had in the Lunar Society. So I thank you all incredibly seriously for what so far has been just superb. Secondly, because of my religion, I'm Jewish, I've seen it firsthand and received it firsthand discrimination. And in fact, I was the first Jewish deputy lieutenant in 500 years in this West Midlands area. Whether they made a mistake or not is another question. To me, unless people stand up for their rights, you end up where I was in November in Auschwitz. So it is vitally important that people stand up for what is their rights. My biggest difficulty is something that Deirdre said, which was empathy. And I look at Lewis Hamilton and how he is leading brilliantly Black Lives Matters within the F1 community. And then I look at Trump, which is the opposite in every single way, shape or form. And yes, you have to stand up for yourselves, but I would suggest that if we are able to echo more closely Lewis Hamilton as against the dreadful way that is being dealt with by other people, there is more likelihood of success. Thank you.
I'd like to bring in Peter next. You're on mute. Yeah, you, Peter, but you're on mute at the moment.
According to me, you can't hear me.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, we can now.
Yeah, sorry. So I had to slip out because I'm being told about a whole load of political abuse I've just received from within the Socialist Health Association. So I missed the last few minutes, for which I apologise.
I think I was talking to Peter. Is that Borgo?
Ah, the other Peter.
The other Peter. Sorry.
The vice chair Peter.
Yeah, Peter, over to you. Sorry.
Hi, sorry about this. I was just wondering, I mean, should Black History Month be replicated in this Rainbow City of Birmingham by a Brown History Month and the Yellow History Month and various other ethnic minorities?
I mean, it's a fair question. I mean, I think that what we're saying right now is that British history is told through a particular lens. Now, how do we illustrate that particular lens? Well, I guess crudely speaking, it is predicated on white supremacy. And that is best illustrated with those monuments like Edward Colston, who enriched himself from enslaving Africans, and he was revered. Schools named after him, centers named after him. And so the whole of our history, the whole of our schooling is rigged to perpetuate this one-sided story. What Black history have done is, given that Western societies, wealth, power, Peter, is predicated on the enslavement of Africans. The pushback is to say, we need Black History Month, just to edge our way back into the consciousness of what needs to be addressed. And so I'm not pushing back against Black history. And yes, I want a more global history of everybody. But right now we're talking about our history, and we ought to have the space for that. I also want to come back to a piece that that Joe said. I mean, you know, Joe and I, we cross swords. I think his analogy of George Floyd begging for his life is not a good one. He was begging for his life as Jewish people were begging for their lives from brutality. It doesn't matter what you do, when somebody has their knee on your neck, it's very difficult to get out. In regards to changing systems, voting is very powerful, and voting is a numbers game, pure and simple. And in places like Birmingham, in wards, in areas, the Black, Asian, and minority ethnic communities have the numbers if we vote. And too often we don't. Hear this for a second. We are perhaps in one of the most important elections in American history, with, as Clive, I think, said, we are up against a man who is dog whistling to white supremacists. His regime and those Republicans that support him have erased, hear this now, 16 million voters off the ballot sheet in this election. 16 million. African Americans today are queuing for 10 hours to vote because polling booths have been taken away. It's not a level playing field by a long stretch. And so when people say, you know, why are you getting excited? I'm excited because I care, and I'm angry. I'm angry when I see what happens in the States. I'm angry when I see the way that the police, as Yvonne said, stop people from reaching their potential or seeing our young Black kids as criminal. I'm angry. And that's the system that needs to change. We have to do our part, Joe, I know that, but it's a system that is symptomatic, locking us out, holding us back, that we have to grab the bull by the horns and wrench it around to afford us a leveler playing field.
Right, I've got 2 more questions to go and then we're going to have to conclude it there. Simon, over to you.
Okay, you want me to put my camera on as well?
Yes, please, if you can do.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so I used to work in Leicester City Council. I got a very interesting secondment at one time, just before I actually finished working as the policy support officer to the leader of the council. I was literally sat outside of his door. So I saw everybody who went in to lobby, and I had a good idea of you know, what they went in to lobby for, because I was the one that was asked to get reports from you know, from corporate directors and managers across the council. The one thing I did not see much of was anybody from either Caribbean or African communities going into lobby. And to me, that's, you know, you have to be dealing with people who are in positions of power to get them to make change, because they've got their hands on the lever. So I really want to ask the panel, you know, about any examples or ideas that the panel have about how our communities can better coordinate and resource lobbying of people who are in positions of power, both at a local level and at a national level. Because if we are not lobbying those who are in power, we're not going to achieve any change at all. The other communities that did were very successful at getting what they wanted. Thank you.
Let's start with Councillor Yvonne Mosquito. Would you like to respond?
Yes, gosh, how do you lobby? Let me just, sorry about this. There are so many strategies that we've had in terms of lobbying for change. We will adopt and create policies, and every couple of years, the local authority will create a strategy document for inclusion, but nothing ever changes. We have wonderful strategy. Birmingham is filled. Birmingham City Council is filled with people who have wrote wonderful strategy documents. Nothing changes. What I would say that we should do is create almost a panel which monitors these so-called strategies. So we had the Macpherson report. Do you remember the Macpherson report? I'm sure we can all mention lots of different reports that have been created. What changed since then? Can anyone tell me what changed? Not very much, but if we had a body which monitored the so-called targets that they've set, and then they're penalized for not meeting those targets, so they have to pay financial penalties, I bet you will see some changes. That's my one little proposal.
Would anybody else like to, from the panel, like to come in before I move into another question?
Well,
Yes.
I'm pleased that Simon does what he does. Simon is a mentee of mine. He is an entrepreneur. He's a businessman, and I see that my role as somebody that can open doors is to elevate Simon into those conversations. And I'm really pleased that in the last few months I've seen him speaking to ministers at the Treasury, and he's gone there lobbying with facts, hard facts, with solutions. And you know what? The Treasury like it. Because his argument is, this is not only good for me as a business entrepreneur, it's good for you in the Treasury, and it's good for business. So I think as one thing that me and Joe can agree on aggressively is that we've got to be smart. Simon's
Absolutely. Absolutely. But you see, Simon, you're being a little bit disingenuous. You and I agree far more than we disagree. So for example, if the point that I'm still making is your work at Operation Black Vote in bringing together over the years, training for people to get into politics and so on, has created a caucus of people now in politics who would not have been there had it not been for the work of OBB. the simple point I'm making about the George Floyd, which you don't think is a good example, but I'm showing you why it is. The thing is that the community in America cannot simply go from one George Floyd killing to another George Floyd killing and think that somehow by appealing to the better nature of that white racist society, that's going to get any different outcomes. So what does it have to do? It has to work out, as you have done around politics, how do you create critical mass so that no police dare do that to your people? That's what we need to think about. And that's really all that I'm saying. And whether it's politics, whether here, and I like this question about how do we lobby, again, I'm saying, you know, we can't just appeal to the better nature of a system that for 600 years has shown us exactly what it is. We have to find ways of procuring power, of becoming more valuable, of putting pressure on the system. And I'm suggesting, Simon, that your work through OBV has done exactly that. And what I'm saying is that we need to find ways of doing more of that in other sectors.
We've got 2 questions and I'm so aware of time. We've got about 10 minutes before 8 o'clock. So if we can go quickly over to, I think it's Lorenzo. And then after that, we're going to go straight to, is that Amarano? You know who I'm talking about, I've messaged you. So Lorenzo, you first. Lorenzo? Are you there? I've just messaged you. Lorenzo Toca, you had a question?
I think the question is in the chat, isn't it, anyway?
Yeah, it is. Sorry. Okay, let's go over to, is that Amarano? If you ask your question and then I'll go back into the chat and get Lorenzo's. Okay. Let me just.
You mean Amano? Is that, are you talking to me?
Yes, I am. Sorry.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Amano. Yeah, so as the, let me put my camera on, let's be more respectful. Hi everyone. So as the young person in this Zoom call who is doing a degree in international relations and development, what I've seen is that the movement and why we're even having a discussion about Black Lives Matter is because it's come from young people using social media and actually showing and demonstrating that they are politically engaged, as much as I suppose the prevailing idea is that the older generation don't see that young people are engaged and they don't care about politics, just care about their smartphone, etc. So I think I put my question in the chat, but I'll just reiterate it for those who haven't seen. Young people are leading the charge for social change, i.e. through Black Lives Matter. In what ways are the older generation who are particularly the Black political veterans, how are you coming alongside young people with your experience without the barrier of application forms? Because for me, young people have the energy, but we also have to bear in mind that those who have come forward have the experience and have the know-how. And I feel like it's a two-pronged technique that we need to use when we're working against the system. So that's my question that I offered to the panel.
I like to keep it open to the panel.
If I can offer an answer, I think the main thing is, and having, I've got 4 children, but 2 of them are teenagers and the others are younger. The main thing is managing expectations. I think that's the benefit of our experience. We can manage expectations. So I'm not going to talk about any particular movement, but all the different movements that we have had and all the different campaigns that the Black community has had do not last long. They seem to be very reactive, and we don't seem to be, something happens and then we react, and then after a couple of months it probably dies down. We don't actually formulate with young people, from the benefit of our experience, what they could be doing in the first place without waiting for something to happen. So that if they start to prepare for whatever is going to happen, because something always comes up, they will be on the front foot. They will be ahead of the curve instead of waiting and then, not knowing how to respond. Everybody just knows they're so angry, and perhaps breaking laws or breaking laws that needed to be broken, but perhaps that could have been done beforehand. So I think that's what we can offer. Some of us are young, middle-aged, older, political veterans. We all have a lot of different experiences that we can offer. And I think particularly we need to manage our young people's expectations in what they can expect and what is realistic, and also how they can have longevity in the actions they decide to carry out.
One of the things about my own life is of course trying to do things biblical and theological. And one of the things that comes from the Bible is in addressing young people, Christian Bible is about the strength and the energy of young people. And for older people, it's about their wisdom and the gray hair, which I don't have, as a sign of that you've been through a few stuff and you've accumulated. So I think I think we're at our best in tackling the challenges that we face in life in this country, nonetheless, when we get intergenerational engagement, when the young vibrancy, sometimes hot-headedness, and the strength of youth can somehow run alongside the experience of some people who would recognize exactly a point that Rachel just made. And actually, you can blow out the energy and still haven't got anything of structure in place to sustain the movement once the energy has sapped. So I think it's bringing those two things together, not diluting the energy, not diluting the vigor, and sometimes the hot-headedness, which is, it's good to tear down a statue or two. Actually, things in life hardly change unless somebody breaks the rules. That is a history. That is our history as humanity. A history in this country. In this country, we see people in Parliament going, "Oh, my Lord, the Prime Minister." The answer I gave to my honourable, but 100 years, 200 years ago, they're chopping off each other's heads. So to get to where we are, you go through a process, and then you come to another place. So what I'm saying is that the older heads, having gone through some stuff, getting alongside the young people with their energy, the two fermenting each other, I think that's about the best way. So if you don't have an old mentor, young sir, not me, but I'd suggest you talk to Lord Simon Woolley and see if you can be on the phone to him just occasionally where you need an old shoulder to lean on and a whole head to get some wisdom from.
The final question that was here, and we're going to have to go through this really quickly because I'm so aware of the time and I really didn't want to go over 8. So in regards, this is Lorenzo's one, in regards to tearing down the Edwards Colston statue, what sort of impact does it have, if any, when we have local government and political figures condoning the act as vandalism and criminal?
Let me just say that because of those young people, including you, Armano, we, as elders, are having discussions we could never have. Your protest have convulsed our society to demand that our issues are listened to. I've never spoken to so many people in high places that say to me, Simon, if Black Lives Matters, what do we need to do? I keep telling them, I can't tell you in 1 minute, I can't tell you in 1 hour, but if you want to go on a journey, let's do that. But as Joe said, we, Yvonne, Rachel, Joe, have to take you along. It's called succession planning. I'm in Birmingham. I have one of our alumni. We're doing a leadership project. I spend most of my life, most of my 30 years of activism, nurturing talent. That's what we do. Succession planning. We have to be humble to listen to you. You have to be humble to listen to us. We go on a journey. And when we have that critical mass, led on this, we're in a position, Amano, so we're not asking for justice, but demanding it. Strength, brother.
Finally, I would just like to give each panel member a minute. I know we're going to run over slightly, but a minute just for your closing thoughts for all of those who have joined us today. So, Rachel, would you like to start?
Yes. here I am. Yeah, it's been a great discussion, a lot of food for thought. I think it's shown the diversity of our thought processes, even though we actually have one aim, one goal, and all the different ways that we can get there. In terms of moving forward, beyond Black History Month is something that we're really going to have to think of, because these problems reoccur all the time and the discussions reoccur all the time, and at some point something has to give, and we have to, whether it's the lobbying or the voting or whatever it is, something has to give so that we can move on a bit from the same discussions that we have as a people living in the UK.
Bishop Dr. Joe Aldred.
Well, I end by saying that, you know, the old maxim that power is never given, it's only ever taken, is one that we need to take very seriously. And the question is, how do you take power? How do you wrench power? And I think we mostly do it by amassing critical mass in whatever space we find ourselves in. And then, as Simon, you love to say, you make demands. But actually, you do more than make demands when you have, we've seen through the Black Lives Matter movement, for example, when a group of people come together and throw a rope around Colston's statue, pull it down, right? And when begging for anything, tear it down, then you must talk to me. We need to, as a community, to ask ourselves the question, symbolically, what does that mean for us in every area of life in this country?
Thank you. Councillor Yvonne Mosquito.
We are in a period of massive transformation. The world will never be the same after COVID. It's changing now. This young man talked about how do we, you know, what's the strategy? How do we work together with the older generation? If I speak to a young person now and ask them the question, the first thing they do is pick up their phone, and they can Google it, or they can speak to a friend in China or in Pakistan or in the Caribbean. They have connections all over the world. The driver for change is this technology. I have almost great hope for this change that's happening. I can see, you know, that I've just come out of the Feast of Tabernacles for my Jewish brothers and sisters, and it's 7 days, from the 2nd of, well, 8 days, but 2nd to the 9th. And I was able to have a dialogue with a lovely friend in Israel who could tell me about Sukkot and the booths and what you do. And I thought, fabulous. The technological changes, the means of communication will empower us to make the kind of changes that we need to make. Let me just close with this small thing. When I went to China, I saw Buddha's uncle. Buddha's uncle was Black. Let me close there.
And finally, over to you, Lord Simon Woolley.
Well, I would like to hand it over to one of the young men or women to say the last words. That's what we call succession planning.
We're keeping it open. Does anybody quickly want to jump in, because we're after 8? Because if not, then I will do my closing.
I'm on it.
The closing is these types of conversations are greatly important. Obviously, the young people of this decade have sparked another great discussion that we've had for the last, let's say, 70 years. But I really have, I am on the width to make on both sides, and so I hope that this is not the last conversation that we have, and I would like to see the esteemed colleagues here have these types of discussions down in the community with young people who are willing and able to want to create social change both here and internationally as we go through globalization.
I want to say thank you to all of our panel and all of you who participated and took the time out to be with us, the Lunar Society, today for our second Black History Month event, Black in Politics. I really hope that we can all take something away, and especially all of us who have some kind of position of influence, or that we can give to young people, that when young people come across your path and they may be different to you, that you see that giving them just that opportunity, you could be a part of their history or her story, and give them the opportunity to change our community in a way that possibly may not happen unless we open our hearts and our minds to the fact that they are young people, they are human, and they deserve every opportunity. And that passion and drive, especially in politics, should be nurtured and encouraged so they can become the next generation, and that the House of Commons can represent all of us who live in the UK. And on that note, I want to hand back over to our chair, Deirdre. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it so much. And especially you, panel. Thank you, thank you, thank you for making my first Lunar Society event as one of the executive members happen, and the success that I knew it would be. Thank you. Deirdre, over to you.
Thank you, Charmaine. And thank you, everyone. You know, I'm seeing all of these reactions. I'm putting it to you that you could do better than that. You can unmute yourselves. Come on, unmute yourselves, and let's just clap for this panel, for Charmaine, for ourselves, for this, for the future. This was just so incredible. Thank you so much.
Charmaine, well done, everybody. Brilliant.
Absolutely brilliant. You know, I feel honestly so emotional. I mean, that's just incredible. You know, for so long, when I saw the horrible murder of George Floyd, I literally, it felt like it was something that I was just feeling within my soul. And the idea of what he said, I can't breathe, was just literally what I had been feeling for so long. I grew up in the Caribbean, and I was blessed, and I was frankly privileged. I didn't understand and appreciate my privilege at the time, but I grew up surrounded by conversations with people like Sir Grantley Adams, and with people like Dame Eugenia Charles, with people like Maurice Bishop. And it was just an incredible opportunity that I had to be amongst that type of august company and to have the influence and impact of these types of people. And tonight, I felt like I had come home, because I was amongst people who were speaking my language in my soul. And I've felt lonely for so long. So thank you for that, very selfishly, thank you for that. And I wanted to say, I mean, a lot of what came out at me, I mean, one of the point that Clive made was really, it was a revelation that wasn't a revelation, because for so long, I've always felt, frankly, you know, I thought to myself, well, if that could have happened so easily in that period of time, that only such a short time ago, how much more easily could it still happen today? Right. And, you know, and we think to ourselves, oh no, it couldn't happen. But then we see the emergence of what is happening in America. And it's scary and it's close. And that's why we need to be having these conversations. And that's why I'm so happy that we have such a diverse audience tonight to hear and understand and appreciate and dialogue. And the wonderful thing was also that we had that robust discussion amongst ourselves. And that leaves us open to come to serious conclusions in order to move forward. So that creativity that Joe was talking about is exactly what we need to be going down through and with each other. And the succession planning, absolutely. I mean, I'm a governance professional. I'm always about the succession planning. So obviously we had that long before it became a framework. So thrilled and happy. And I say thank you so much for tonight. Before we go on to the last of the entertainment, I just want to just say, in regards to the Lunar Society, we're not just about the talk shop, and we really want to make sure that we are catalyzing that action. So we would really encourage all of you to join us in this movement to move things forward. Join us with yourselves, join us with your organizations, and let's keep not just the dialogue going, but keep things moving forward. So we do have a number of events coming up through the rest of this Black History Month. And I'm hoping that David will put the slides up for me so that I can show that. But we have Black in Innovation and Technology, and that's going to be chaired by Martin Levermore. And we're having Black in Health, and that's going to be chaired by Jason Ivy, and that's coming up, I think, the 21st and the 26th. And then we have the Sir Adrian Cadbury Lecture, and we commissioned a governance inquiry, and so that's going to be launched, and that will be with Carl George, and we're also very, very blessed that we're going to have Carl presenting his new race equality code. Thank you, David. So yes, so Liam Byrne is going to be our principal speaker at the Sir Adrian Cadbury Lecture. And we would be honestly very delighted and honored if you could join us within these events and bring this level of energy and debate. So the last thing that we're going to do tonight is we're going to have an absolutely fantastic and amazing gentleman. His name is Kwame Toussaint, and Kwame is a saxophonist in jazz, gospel, and rumba. I don't know if he's going to play any rumba tonight, and I don't know if any of you know, but the former chair of the Lunar Society, from whom I've now taken over, Jackie Smith, who is former Home Secretary, she's appearing on Strictly Come Dancing, and I think she's going to be doing the rumba. I can't wait to see that. So Kwame is going to be playing for us tonight. He's also a member of the People's Orchestra and the Heart of England Cooperative Concert Orchestra. So thank you, everyone, and I'll hand it over to Kwame.
So,
I'll see the big guys.
Bravo, bravo. Bravo. Kwame, thank you so very much. Thank you so very much for that. So I guess that's it, everyone. Thank you so much again. And I guess we'll say bye-bye with jazz hands. And thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a great day.
Until next week.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.